Iowa City is a unique community. This uniqueness is shaped by the people who contribute their ideas, their gifts, and their energy to the life of Iowa City and the university. Welcome to a series of biographical interviews of special women and men who have affected this community. Their contributions have been valuable, their lives creative and full. What brought them here? Who influenced them? What contributions have pleased them the most? These and other questions will be explored during this series of interviews entitled, Tell Me Your Story. Many books, hundreds of magazine articles, and thousands of newspaper stories and press releases have been written about the career and the story of my guest, Dan Gable. Dan Gable is the most famous name in American amateur wrestling history, and here are some remarkable statistics. During his prep and college careers, he compiled a record of 182 wins and 1 loss. He was a 3-time All-American, 3-time Big 8 champion for the Cyclones. After graduation from ISU in 1971, he added titles from the Pan American Games, the Tbilisi Tournament, the World Championships, and the Olympics. He was selected the nation's outstanding wrestler by the AAU in 1970. Dan was named to the U.S. Wrestling Hall of Fame in '80, the National High School Sports Hall of Fame in '84, and the U.S. Olympic Hall of Fame in '85. Amateur Wrestling News has called Dan Gable the greatest pinner in college history. But his individual wrestling career is only part of his story. He's also the top wrestling coach in the nation today. After 16 years as coach, his program at Iowa has accomplished more than any other college sports program. Hawkeye wrestlers have won the Big Ten title ever since Dan took over. The Hawkeyes have won 9 consecutive NCAA championships from 1978 to '86 and again in '91 and '92. He's coached 90 Big Ten champions, 106 All-Americans, and 32 NCAA champions at Iowa. And 8 of his former athletes have been Olympians, and 3 won gold medals. But there's another chapter in his life also. It's one of his family. He's a family man, and he and his wife Kathy have 4 daughters, Jennifer, Annie, Molly, and Mackenzie. And his story also includes community service to the Ronald McDonald House, elementary schools, and other organizations. Thanks, Dan, for being here today. Your story, I know, begins, or your first chapter, in Waterloo, Iowa. You were born October 25th, 1948. Tell me a little bit about your family, kind of what they stressed and what your father did and mother, vocations.
Well, it's going back there a while, but I remember being born, and from then on, I don't remember being born, but I remember once things started happening around me, I remember a lot of things from my parents as far as like words of wisdom. It seemed like immediately they were always not really chirping at me, but they were always giving me advice, and they were giving me opportunity, and they were giving me a setting that was, I think, what I call conducive for a good lifestyle. They threw me in the YMCA right away when I was 4 years old. And I can remember being in leadership programs and actually having jobs when I was in grade school. That, of course, at that time, I think my first job was 35 cents an hour. And I think it was basically handing towels out and cleaning lockers and things like that at the YMCA. But between the ages of 4 and 12, that's basically my second home, the YMCA. And I think those qualities that they taught me in those years had a major influence on my lifestyle right through today. And I guess not only did I hear a lot of things like leadership qualities thrown at me from and a competitive point of view at the YMCA, but when I'd go home, it seems like my mother and my father would also be kind of pushing me in that direction. Just always little. I can remember my mom always having these little sentences that she would say to me that made me think about what they meant. And after I thought about them, I realized that they were pretty good and they were understandable. So I have to give them a lot of credit for how I developed. And I'm not saying that I'm the most diverse person in the world. There's probably not a lot of things that I really, really enjoy to do or take the time to do, just because I concentrate on certain things. And what I do concentrate on, I think I've proven that I've done well, and I try to do well. And again, that's probably, what I'm working on as a person, what my profession is, and probably the immediate people around me, whether it's my athletes or my family or whatever. But I've always, because of this raising, the way I was talking about it, I think I've been a little narrow-minded, but yet over the years, I've become a little more well-rounded, at least as far as flexibility and listening. But it goes back to them.
What did your father do?
My dad was mostly, he's been in real estate in Waterloo, and he's actually semi-retired now. But he's so much established in Waterloo that it was hard for him to retire, because he tried to retire, and then all of a sudden people kept wanting him to work. So he kind of just works at his leisure right now.
Well, tell me, you were swimming, obviously, at the Y, and football. What made you decide that wrestling was going to be your passion? And certainly it has been.
Well, actually, I tried about every sport. In fact, I used to visualize being great in every sport that I was at, and I was able to be associated with great people, even though they weren't really there, just in my mind. But as I got older, after trying baseball, after trying basketball, after trying baseball, football, swimming, I excelled in swimming pretty well early. In fact, I won a state YMCA championship right here in the University of Iowa City Fieldhouse when I was 12 years old. But once junior high came, swimming and wrestling were in the same at the same time. And so those two sports actually were the two sports that I seemed to be the best at. But actually, if I look at it, wrestling was probably the easiest sport for me as compared to any of them, for some reason. From day one, when I stepped on the mat with somebody, it was almost natural for me to be a wrestler, as compared to, I could be a good baseball player or a good football player. But my size, I was relatively small, especially at the early ages, where like in 9th grade or 10th grade, I was a 95-pounder. I just gradually got bigger all the time. But at that time, that eliminated football, just alone, just from a major school. But the other thing is that as I got older, I felt like I needed to become better at what I was doing. And so if I had 2 or 3 things I was doing, I tried to throw them away a little bit and start channeling, because I had a back of my mind, even from the beginning, that I wanted to be a great sports star. And once I realized wrestling was my so-called best sport, I started eliminating things as I got older. And by the time I got to high school, I was a one-sport man.
One sport, and I read a lot of things about you, but I read that you didn't date much or did date at all in high school. I mean, you really focused.
Well, I didn't know any better.
You didn't know any better?
It was just...
Did somebody tell you not to? I mean, you
No.
didn't party during season, and you were really... Was this an inner thing just come from inside
It's
you?
hard to say exactly, but I think what took place was, as I was building success in a particular area, that I was getting enough rewards and satisfaction out of that, just because the amount of success that was taking place, that I didn't need anything else.
That was feeding you.
Right, that's what I feel.
Was Bob Siddons an influence on you?
Yeah,
Your
my high school coach he's one of the all-time greats. He's still an influence on me to this day, even though he's retired. And I bring him down to my summer camps in this community, and he still has great words of wisdom. He was a great person to listen to, or he is a great person to listen to, and he's really a great role model for young people. In fact, he's influenced all his athletes. They've all respect him. I don't know anyone that has been under him and has not earned a great amount of respect for him. So yeah, he's really he's good with people.
So after high school, then you went to Iowa State. Did they have the best program in the country? Was it close to Waterloo, and your father and mother could come and watch you? All those things, or what made you choose Iowa State?
Only because it was the best wrestling school in the state, and because I had friends there. I wanted to go to the University of Northern Iowa, because I'm from Waterloo, and Cedar Falls is the school because of distance, and I could even live at home. I wasn't really ready to move away from home when I was out of high school. you know, it's kind of interesting with the family I have right now. I think I got my oldest that probably would like to be that way. I think my next oldest, I think, wants to get out real quick. You know, maybe not, but it just seems like she'd like to, you know, she's more of an outgoing person. But myself, if I could have chose the University of Northern Iowa at the time, I would have, except at that time, logic said, go to Iowa State. They were the best wrestling school. They offered me a scholarship, and I had friends there, so that's what I did.
And I read that you made the same intensity and focus that kids still remember you running from class to class with your hood on your sweatshirt up, attending. You really put in the work.
I look back upon my career as an athlete, in high school and college especially, and I almost get embarrassed. Not because of that it really was embarrassing to do, but just because I was so focused that I could do some of the things that I would do without even letting other people around me affect me. For an example, you know, I may be, like you said, I may be running to class at Iowa State University on campus and carrying my books under my arm, having ankle weights on my ankles, you know, just putting a little more
weight on you.
Yeah, right. Or I may be in class, and I may be, if the teacher looked down at my notes, instead of taking notes all the time about class, I may have been writing myself a fired up type of theme to get ready for this next match or something like that. In fact, I look back at some of my old school spiral notebooks, and I got some crazy things written inside there, you know, as far as, you know, how I wanted to be as an athlete and how I wanted to be on the mat. You know, it's hard for me to believe that I could kind of wipe out everything around me and just be that focused now that I'm older and I look at athletes, but it happens.
Did you know when you started as a freshman how good you were?
Not high school or college.
No, I'm talking about now at Iowa State.
No, I did not.
You
no.
didn't?
No, I didn't really think about whether I was going to be a great wrestler or I just kind of did the things I normally did every day. And actually, going out of my athletic career into my professional career, I think that's one of the things that's helped me make the change, just because I didn't really make a whole lot of changes in my lifestyle. I just continued to be the same type of intense type of guy that worked at whatever he needed to work at daily. And after a while, when you work at it that hard, things add up to being a little bit better than the rest, I guess.
I bet your coaches loved coaching you. How about Harold Nichols? What about, was he as big of influence as your high school coach?
Harold Nichols had another way of influencing me, just his mannerism and the way he would put things together. You know, I'm the kind of guy that I really don't think I have my own personal coaching philosophy. I've taken it from Coach Siddons, I've taken it from Coach Nichols at Iowa State, and some other coaches that I've been on international teams, Olympic teams together with, and just kind of studied their styles, kind of put a conglomerate together. One thing I haven't done, and which is good, is I haven't taken my lifestyle and just said this is the way it's got to be in the coaching aspect. I've realized all along the way that everybody's different. And I kind of look at this. I look at it this way: in the Iowa State wrestling room when I was there, and there might have been 25 athletes. If I could number those athletes 1 through 25, 1 being the most disciplined and dedicated, and 25 being the least disciplined and dedicated, I would look back and I would say, should I strive for that number 1 or for number 25? Actually, it's probably somewhere in between. And the reason why is because I looked at number 1. That might have been me in that room as far as the most dedicated at that time. But I look at number 25, and 25 was doing just about as well as I was doing, just because of he needed certain different things. And so I think it taught me some flexibility, which I've been able to use in my coaching, which gives me an opportunity to treat people differently and still have them successful.
Do you think that one loss, the only one, helped you as later on as a coach maybe relate to a wrestler of your own that has a loss? Had you have never lost, would you ever?
In high school and college, that style of wrestling I had never lost. But when I did lose, it affected me at first negatively. Like I didn't know how to handle it. I started going off the wire a little bit. You know, I just I didn't know what I really wanted to do. I was even contemplating giving up wrestling at that time, even though
in 1970.
yeah, even though I even though I wanted to be an Olympic champion, the Olympics weren't going to be until '72. But at that time, I got astray a little bit, and it didn't take me long. But it probably took my mother more than anything else to get me back online.
What did she do? Did she talk to you, or just?
She tried talking to me, but I couldn't face her, and I couldn't talk on the phone. And of course, we were 100 miles apart.
Sure.
And she finally got in her car and came down and slapped me around a little bit, you know, just
verbally, of course.
basically, just trying to get me back on the right track. I needed somebody to talk to me, and the reason why I wouldn't face her or talk to her was because I felt like I was a failure or a loser.
One.
Well, you just didn't
But
know
you,
what direction he was going in.
I know your intensity and your perseverance must have made you feel that way, but in the eyes of the world, you weren't. But
you stated something about helping me, and definitely helped me. That loss helped me. It helped me become a more rounded person, helped me understand losing, and helped me get more prepared for the future so maybe I wouldn't lose again. But
you didn't do much after graduation. You were off to, and all these highlights of this chapter. You won at the Pan Am Games and the World Championships. What do you remember about that? What are the highlights of?
Well, I said one thing to myself after that loss, that once I got back online, I said, it was a close match. It came down to the wire, which most of my matches didn't. You know, I determined the outcome. I really feel that I didn't determine the outcome. I let my opponent or the official determine the outcome, and I said, I really have to be the guy that determines the outcome if I really want to make sure that I can get to do the best I can. There were some situations during that match, my last match that I lost, that really were controversial as far as getting myself really ready to go. So I was bound and determined to have the outcome settled by me and not somebody else, some external pressure, an official or whatever on a call, and that happens every day. But so it made me reach for a new level. And I was going to a new level, which was international wrestling. It was a little bit higher than college wrestling. So it made me become even more disciplined and dedicated to the point that I would determine the outcome. So I really do believe that loss gave me the opportunity to become more of a sure bet and become an Olympic champion.
Pretty valuable, painful lesson, but a valuable lesson. What do you remember about the Russian tournament? What are the...
Well, the Russian tournament is probably one that made me as famous as anything, just because we toured the Soviet Union, and we wrestled in a giant tournament over there, and when they got done, they kind of didn't really threaten me, but they vowed. The national coach in the Soviet Union vowed to find somebody to beat me by the '72 Olympics. And it was about 6 months away. And at that time, I was probably starting to slack off a little bit just because I was the reigning world champion. And I just went to the Soviet Union and was undefeated, and they were supposed to be the best wrestlers at the time. So it's like I probably needed a swift kick a little bit to get me going again. And when he vowed at that particular time nationally or internationally, and made news across America, and seeing those headlines, the Russians vow to beat me, helped me get fired up again to make sure that I could get the job done.
Do you focus on your opponent?
Definitely focus on my opponent, yeah.
Imaging, you have their face in your mind?
Well, I just concentrate a lot. I'm able to not get off track. And that's the thing I didn't do in that particular match where I lost.
What was his name, Larry?
Larry Owings.
Larry Owings.
No, he's pretty famous himself. But I was not concentrating at all in that match for one reason or another. You know, he got to me.
But you certainly concentrated in the Olympics.
Pretty much, yeah.
That was 1972 in Munich. What a time to be in the Olympics.
Exactly. My wrestling was done, thank God, because before the tragedy. And it was something that I think it would have been hard to focus on after that particular incident. But I was already done and ready to catch a flight home.
When this happened?
Well, I was there the day. In fact, it happened about 50 yards from my where I was staying. But I think I took off the next day.
Did you ever think about? Was losing even a word in your mind or vocabulary as you went into the Olympics?
No.
No.
Even though the reigning reigning Olympic champion was in that weight class, and he was a 5-time world champion until I had gotten on the scenes in '71, he didn't really put a scare in me or anything like that. In fact, after the first round of the tournament, he pulled out of the tournament. I think I put more of a scare into him than he put into me.
What made you decide, what went into the decision to coach, and how do you find, is it harder to coach or is it harder to individually compete?
It's depends on who you are. For me, it was a lot easier to be an athlete because, like I said, I pretty much knew the outcome usually, and it was determined by you as an individual, whereas a coach is determined by other people, so it's not within your control. Consequently, it's also more rewarding because there's some things there that can happen that can actually, you might not expect it to happen. I expected it to happen as an athlete, but as a coach, sure, there's some great expectations, but it's not within your control, like I said. So when things do happen there, I get more excited. As an athlete, I control my emotions, but as a coach, I don't do that very often, especially when something happens that's very exciting, or if something goes against the kid where I have to protect him a little bit. I may lose my cool a little bit, even though you try to remain as positive or neutral as possible.
What do you think your greatest strengths are as a coach?
Oh, I would have to say probably the feelings inside of me, and also the meaning that I have to the person that I'm dealing with. I feel like I'm a people-oriented person, especially that type of coach. My athletes are almost like
Children of yours?
right, exactly, almost like sons. And I don't have any sons, so they kind of take the place. But they become very, very important to me, to the point where sometimes I wonder whether I'm wanting to win more for them than they're wanting to win for themselves. But whatever the occasion is, if they look at me and I can help them get more out of themselves by looking at me or being around me, then that's great. Because I realize that they're at an age between 18 and 22 years old that a lot of times you don't really understand, or you're doing something and the feelings really aren't there until maybe later. And I know that they're going to look back upon their careers once they're settled into what they're doing, and they're going to feel real good about the opportunities they've had to succeed or just to put the effort forth.
Plus, you work awfully hard. People say that no one knows. I remember reading an article about Kurtelmeyer was quoted, nobody knows how hard the kids and the coaches work at Iowa.
Well,
you do work hard.
Everybody thinks that they're the hardest working team in America, but if you rate them, there's only going to be one, really, and then they're going to go down from there. And I would have to rate that I would think that's as much as our success as anything, that we're probably right there on top in the work ethic point of view.
What are the greatest challenges for you as a coach?
Well, as they get older, as I get older, as the society changes, I have to take on a lot of new things that maybe I didn't really have to take on before. And I have to go back to my flexibility. When there's new rules and regulations, or there's new emphasis on academics more than before, or there's something that you have to deal with from a drug point of view or something like that in athletics, you've all of a sudden got to accept new things that maybe you didn't have to do before. And so you got to find the time for them. And finding the time for a lot of this stuff is difficult without taking away from what you're trying to accomplish for the athletes and the program. So, you know, to me, the biggest challenge is being able to handle some of the adversity that takes place and creating still more positive things that outweighs the adversity. And in my career, it's kind of like I look at it back and I feel like I built it solidly as a coach and had a lot of great things happen. And then all of a sudden, there was a short period of time where I was starting to lose control of some of these positive things, and there were some negative things going on. But then now to try to come back and reverse that role and try to stay in that role forever is a challenge every day. Because every day, you know, if you go to work and there's 10 good things that happen and only one bad thing that happens, and that's pretty good. But if you go to work and it's pretty even, or even the bad outweighs the good, then you're not doing your job. So I have to work real hard at making sure that all the things around me are more positive than negative. And it's tough in coaching, especially now, because there's so much emphasis on so many things.
A lot of more rules
Right,
than when you start
exactly.
out, more
Right.
regulations, more should and shouldn'ts.
Right.
Tell me, how important is it or is this just the cream of, in the coffee when one of your athletes goes on and competes and wins internationally? Is that a big thing for you as a...
If it's a big thing for him, it's a big
That's
thing
a
for
big
me,
thing for
right?
you.
Actually, I would hope that most of them that when they first come here see the total picture, and that means you come to wrestle and you graduate and you do well both athletically and academically, and that you do go on, and if you have any ambitions at all to be continuing your wrestling, then you want to go on and be international involvement. So, no, I'd love to see my athletes involved in world championships and Olympic games because, you know, it's just much more prestige for them. It's going to make them more solid, give them more credentials, more opportunities to open doors, and it's going to bring more credibility to our program here, and that's what it's all about.
Is it difficult to go coach, like when you went to Los Angeles and Seoul? Didn't you coach the Seoul Olympic team?
I coached the Los Angeles Olympic team in '84, and I was the assistant coach. In Seoul.
Was that a rewarding experience? Or pretty difficult when you hadn't had some of these kids?
Well, in '84 it was very rewarding, especially because they had several teams, several players, athletes from Iowa that actually was on the Olympic team, and I really took a lot of time off to be associated with that Olympic team and following that group. But in '84, not being the head coach, I didn't spend as much time, and so because you don't spend as much time, you don't quite have the same meaning. It's like these kids here are probably here for at least 5 years, and they become pretty important to you when you're dealing with them day in and day out. Whereas maybe if you just go into a camp and you're only dealing with them for 4 or 5, 6 weeks, you really don't know how to handle them. And if you go in there and try to handle them some way that they're not used to, it could blow the whole show.
Yeah. I want to talk about another chapter in your life, your family. I love it. You smiled. Yeah, listen here, you've got all this masculine energy around you all the time, and now you walk into your home at night, and you've got feminine energy. You've got 4 daughters, a wife, Kathy. I think the good Lord was saying, this is good for you, Dan, to have all these girls in your life. What do you think?
It had to be that way. It just had to be that way. I would have never been able to be the same, probably, coach that I am today if it had been a lot of guys, I think, around my house. I mean, I'm not saying there are not going to be a lot of guys, because that's
absolutely, with 4 girls, I know it.
But no, I really feel that it's been great for me because I can get all upset at work and come home and I can change like that.
That's good.
Or I can come home and be around a complete different lifestyle. The thing that's been amazing to me is that even though it can be different, if things aren't going good with my profession, if something's negative from a publicity point of view or a loss point of view, I'll hear about it at home too. So I've got the family hooked on it too. They're hooked on wrestling big time. And consequently, it's like, even though I come home and want to maybe not hear about it, if things aren't going right, I'm going to get a lecture at home, and consequently it keeps me on my toes there too. So they help me. They help me professionally as well as keeping the diversity going.
How did you meet your wife, Kathy?
What's kind of interesting there is because actually one of my best friends was actually dating or being associated with Kathy at the time, and they were actually I was hanging around him and we just started talking. Not like I stole her from him or anything like that.
Oh, no.
Well, you don't know that.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was just like we started talking and we seemed to hit it off pretty good, and after a matter of time it kind of cooled between them, and I guess I picked it up from there.
And you've got a daughter named Jennifer who's 15, and Annie is 13, and Molly 9, and Mackenzie 4. And I know they're starting getting involved in activities other than wrestling. One is a cheerleader for the wrestling squad.
Right, she's the captain of the cheerleading for the varsity wrestling squad.
Varsity wrestling. Do you get to go watch her?
Well, rules and regulations of NCAA would probably not have allowed me to go as much as to these wrestling events, except she's a part of the event, so I get to go, yeah.
And then you have dancers. Don't you have some dancers?
Yeah, they're all dancers.
Oh, they're all dancers.
Yeah,
so you've gone to a few dance recitals.
Yeah. I've been to a lot of different events. Got one right now playing the violin. That's Molly.
Good.
They've all played the piano a little bit.
So you occasionally drive a carpool? Do you help out a little?
A little bit. My wife is pretty much picks up that. I'd have to say that. I tell you how I usually help out is it gives me an opportunity to stay in the office at night a little later, because you know, a few years ago when we didn't have kids, the wife probably wanted me home a little earlier. But now, when there's people to be picked up at 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night, she says, well, go ahead and stay at the office and work a couple extra hours, pick up Jenny, Annie, you know, on the way home, Molly, or whatever. And so it works out good. I get a little more work done, and then I can help out in the carpool. But she's going from beginning of the day till night, and she's running around way more than I would like to from that point of view.
What do you do to relax? Do you go to a dance recital and relax, or listening to your kids play the music, or do you have some hobbies besides?
Well, when I go someplace to listen or to travel or to whatever I do, I like to be kind of done with whatever I'm supposed to have done. Probably the number one thing I do to relax, to be honest with you, is get a physical workout. It kind of takes all the stress away from me, and it kind of spends me. It's about the only time I can really sit down and totally relax. And if I can incorporate that with my family, then it keeps my temper down, or keeps everything going a little bit smoother, because you know, I feel like it's something that I've done all my life, and it's something that I think that can aid in my overall health, and at the same time keeps me more even-tempered. So probably physical exercise is the number one thing that I do every day. And I don't miss a day. There's no way. I mean, I'll find a way to work out.
Do you like to? You don't like to cook, or do you like to?
I like to eat.
You like to eat?
I don't mind cooking, but I really don't take the time.
Well, you don't have you don't have much time at all. I just want to get in. I read some wonderful stories about you involve your wrestlers in some community involvements. I mean, you helped Shimmick move the furniture. I think that's great. I mean, with all these big husky wrestlers, you moved furniture, and you got involved in the Ronald McDonald House a little. Can you talk about that?
Well, ever since we've been here, because of the notoriety of the wrestling team from being successful on the mat, we've had a lot of requests to either be involved in some type of charity situation. You have to pick and choose what you think you can do, and when there's something that's a natural, you know, I get involved. You know, the Ronald McDonald House is part of, right on Carver Hawkeye land. It's right there, and it's something that is a great opportunity for people, and it was easy for us to get associated with it. There's been some runs over the years where you go out and you run half marathons and you raise money for the multiple sclerosis or something like that, and the wrestling team was like, I could say, well, instead of having a workout today, I'll have them run involved and get involved in this, and good publicity. We'd wear our Iowa Wrestling Gold sweats, and we'd help raise money, and you know, we've had a lot of opportunities. Shimmick School, my daughters have been all through Shimmick School, and they were in need of, they didn't want to spend a whole lot of money. The money was kind of tight, so I had 35 volunteers that were, instead of weightlifting that day, I had them move furniture, and it pays off, because people will remember that, and they'll come out and support you a little more. And sometimes when you do have some negative publicity, which the thing about an Iowa wrestler is when something does happen, he's going to make the press. It's just because of the notoriety of the national championships, and we got to realize that. But at the same time, I got to realize also that they're students, and they're going to have some of the student life, and there's going to be a few times that negative occasions happen. But when I have the opportunity to do positive things, I want my team and myself to exemplify that more than a negative publicity.
That's great. Tell me, Dan, what, looking back in you're quite young, your short life, what event or person had a major impact on you? I know you said Siddons and Nichols did, and your parents. Was there some event, too, in your life?
Well, I think this is pointed out a lot in my career. I had a sister that was very close. Well, it was my mom and dad and my sister Diane and myself, and we were raised together, and she had never actually moved out yet. She was 19 years old, and she was actually helping my dad in his business. And at this particular time, you know, she was one of my biggest fans, and I just won a state championship for the first time as a sophomore, and it was just maybe a month later after that, and my mom and my dad and myself were on a fishing trip about 100 miles away, and she was to meet us, and she didn't show up on time. And so we called and had the neighbor basically break into the house to find out because they said that the car was there and that there was some music being played on a radio. So we knew something was wrong. And so they broke in the house and they found her, she had been murdered and raped and stabbed. And that particular incident, I saw what took place with my parents at that time. And my mom, I can remember beating her head on the cabin floor at that time that we were staying, not being able to understand. And I watched my family after that for months, years, go through some turmoil, and it was like, something needed to happen. Otherwise, things were falling apart big time, and I felt like I needed to even help my mom and dad more than ever before at this particular time, just because it was a very, it seemed like fights were happening all the time in my family because of this particular incident. People, like, they would blame each other, or whatever, and so I kind of said, I got to help keep this team together a little bit more, and I'm just going to be that much more conscientious and let them concentrate on me, and I'll give them enough to concentrate on.
Boy, and you did.
So that's just one thing, and not that I really didn't have a lot of major goals before this incident, but it's kind of like an incident that's a very negative factor that somehow you can turn around to help direct your life in more positive ways.
And I think you gave your parents also 4 beautiful granddaughters to love and cherish. I think that's a lovely gift.
They never treated me like they treat them.
Well, I know it. As you know, Dan, girls are different. Yeah. They're there to teach us things, aren't they?
Right.
Well, it's been a real privilege to have you. I've enjoyed getting to know you a little bit, and thank you for being a guest today.
Thank you. Enjoyed it myself.
My guest has been Dan Gable, University of Iowa Hawkeye wrestling coach. His record is one of superlatives. As a wrestler, he holds high school and collegiate wrestling records. He is an Olympic, world, and NCAA champion. As coach at Iowa, Gable has won the Big Ten championship 16 years in a row. He's coached 9 consecutive Hawkeye national championships from 78 to 86 and the past 2 national championships. He's molded 90 Big Ten champions, 106 All-Americans, and 32 NCAA champions. And 8 of his former athletes have been Olympians and have won gold medals. Mr. Gable is a family man. He and his wife, Kathy, are raising 4 daughters in Iowa City, Jennifer, Annie, Molly, and Mackenzie. And he's also involved in our community, helping with various philanthropic and school activities. Dan Gable's story is one of dedication, intensity, perseverance, hard work, teaching, commitment, and inspiration. Olympic medal winner and assistant coach Barry Davis stated, quote, "There's a kind of a charisma beaming off of him." And his wife Kathy said, quote, "He's just a real caring person, a unique individual with a unique story."